Welcome to the Prophets in Pajamas podcast. I'm Danielle DeTeach, or Coach Danni D, and I help women entrepreneurs and professionals to achieve their personal success stories that include joy, fulfillment, and balance. This is where we talk about how to build your business in a way that allows you to work with ease, be successful, and enjoy your life. My happy place is spending as much time in my PJs as humanly possible. And I want to help other women find their happy space while running profitable businesses or having a successful career. So get comfortable and let's dig in. Hello and welcome to the Prophets in Pajamas podcast. I am your host, Coach Danni D, always here helping you to find that balance in life so that you can live a life that is full of joy and fulfillment. I am so excited to have our guest here today. For those of you who are avid watchers or listeners to the podcast, you will recognize this face and this voice because Ty has been here before and we talked about marriage. And now we're going to bring it to motherhood because let's complete the package. I know, most of us are, wives, mothers, just doing all the things. And for those of you who are not mothers, I don't want you to tune out because this conversation is relevant to any woman. And if you're not a mother, you're somebody's child. So so it's relevant in that way. And I'm a big believer of, how you operate in relationship translates to every other thing that you do. So I'm excited about this conversation. Um, I have an intro for Ty, but we done met Ty before. Ty, I'm gonna get into my own intro for Ty. So Ty is everything self-care and making sure that as women we are not getting lost in all of the things, right? Because it's a lot of things and it is a lot to navigate. And so I don't, I love, Ty's perspective because she's always finding different ways to make sure that we are cherishing the things that are important to us, but also just not getting lost in the process as we go through and making sure that we are taking care of ourselves first. So I appreciate that about Ty. I also want to mention that she has an amazing anthology that is coming out that she's featured in, and it's The Heart of a Mother, stories of love, strength, and sacrifice across generations. So that is exciting. So for all of you who are of our avid readers, I want you to pick up this book. Just our pre-conversation alone was so rich around, that generational learning and unlearning. So I don't want to belabor the point any further. I just want to introduce Ty. Hey, Ty, welcome back.
Hey, I'm so excited to be back, especially talking about this topic, just the legacy of mothers,
Yes,
right? And whether
yes.
that's your mother, your grandmother, a mother figure in your life, or the legacy that you are leaving on your children or those other people in your lives who you are a part of.
Right, right. And I mean, that's the thing about mothering that is so rich. Like you don't have to birth a child to be a mother.
Nope.
There are so many mother figures and we can't leave out aunties because that's a
Mhm.
whole other dynamic of like, that love of a mother, but that friendship, situation. So it is there are so many different ways you can be seen as a mother, but um also just again everything that we're talking about today translates into something else. So again, those of you that are like, oh goodness, I'm not a mama, I'm tired of hearing about kids, just stay tuned, stay tuned,
Absolutely.
stay tuned. So just to kind of kick off a question for us, Ty, what does it mean to carry your mother's legacy while creating your own?
Which I absolutely love that question. And this anthology that I'm a part of had me really reflecting on that in a different way. I think that one of the things that we shared in our pre-call was sometimes it's easy to point out the things that your mom didn't do right, right? And without taking into account all of those seeds that they planted that
Mm-hmm.
helped you become who you are that are still bearing fruit,
Yes. Yes.
right? And it's, whether it was the way that I know a lot of women who talk about the way that their moms practice self-care with their skincare routine at night, right? And
Mm-hmm.
watching that and passing that on, not only doing it themselves, but passing it to their children. Or the way that maybe your mom set boundaries that wasn't very popular, when she was
Right.
doing it, but now we're all about boundaries, right? And
Right.
my mom was ahead of the game on that one.
Right. And like my grandmother used to say, look, I don't care if I stand alone. And
Look,
she meant it. Like if she felt
yes,
a way,
yes,
she did not care what anybody else thought about it. And I was just like, you know what? She was ahead of her time.
yes, yes. And one of the biggest threads that I can see woven amongst the generations is that one of philanthropy. And
Mm,
that's a word, a topic, a sentiment that I really want us to own
yeah.
because it's very easy for society to say, oh, well, like you have to have 6 or 7 figures before you're a philanthropist, right?
Right.
When maybe you're not wealthy and money, but your attitude of generosity and what you give to other people, you are definitely a philanthropist. And I saw this in my grandmother. So she was definitely the type, if you were like, oh, I love those earrings. By the time you left, she had them off
Mm-hmm.
and you had to take them and
Yes.
you had to take
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Right. And that went, from something as small as earrings, clothes, or shoes to as, big as the sofa or a mirror she had on her wall.
Mm-hmm.
And, watching her give so selflessly was something that my mother picked up on and
Mm-hmm.
ended up doing the same thing, and something that I've picked up on. And again, not only have replicated, but passed along to my children.
Yes.
And it was one of those things that's easily missed if you don't go back and like, oh, wait a minute, like this, like I didn't just start this.
No,
I'm
no,
doing
it
this
was a part of
because
how you were raised. And
yes,
it's
yeah.
so, I think sometimes it's so just seamless that we don't pay attention to it. But I absolutely love how you have like reclaimed the idea of philanthropy because we don't take into consideration, especially like culturally, like that is huge. Like, we have always taken care of community.
Mhm.
And if that's not philanthropy, what is it?
Right? Right? Because we will have like a fish plate, on Friday to raise
Right,
money for somebody who needs money for something. And you're
right,
like, well, I can't buy the fish, but I can make deliveries. I can't do this, but I can take the orders. I
right.
can't, right? And so it is community coming together and supporting each other that we do so well.
Yes, yes. And I just love that. Like, I'm just like sitting here, like, and I know you said it before, but it's just hitting me in this moment. Like, we really don't give ourselves the credit for that because they we're gonna make sure that everybody's taken care of. And if you think about when you look back to, through the generations, right? Through, to our grandparents and their grandparents before them, they didn't have much, but they did much. Like there was
Look,
never a hungry mouth. There was always food and community and that aspect that like you said, like, I mean, if something happened, if somebody's, house set on fire, then like everybody was pulling something from the closet to make sure that that family had what they needed.
Right. And so what's funny is when you were talking about that, it reminded me of like my grandmother, and they would have their club meetings on Friday nights where they would play cards and, eat and have beer. And, it was always like the money that they used when they played cards was saved up for their annual summer trip.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so by
Right.
the time that
Yes.
that trip came around in the summer, I mean, they may have had like $100 to put up towards it, but that covered, the bus and the hotel room and right. So they put a little bit more with their spending money and had an annual trip every year.
Right.
Right?
And then I mean, and then that living in abundance, like like that was I think one of the things that I realized in the last like few years of my life, like my grandmother always fostered that before that was like trendy,
Mhm.
but she never gave the impression that there was lack. There was always abundance. It was always she knew what everybody's favorite food was, and it was going to be on that table. That those lessons we attribute to social media or current times, but a lot of those lessons were ingrained in us
Mhm.
long before.
Long before. I remember it was a joke in my family that my grandmother had like this like money drawer, right? Because if anybody needed, oh my, do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I don't know. Let me see. And she would go in her room, close that door, and then come back with your, 5, 10, 20, whatever you needed. She always had it. And we were like, but no matter how many people come ask, no matter how much they need, she has it, right? So again, just this beautiful model of generosity
Yes.
throughout the generations.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah, and I love how you say it. Like, we talk about the things that we have to unlearn, and we're going to get to that. But we really do need to focus on the things that we've learned, the beautiful lessons that they've taught us. And even what you're saying, like sowing a seed. You sow a seed in somebody, having that faith in someone that I mean, you don't know if you can get that $5 back. You probably not. But my grandmother would say all the time, if you give with a giving heart, you'll get it back double fold. And I've lived that throughout my life, through that legacy of her, because there've been times I didn't give what I didn't have.
Hello.
And then all of a sudden something comes along that I'm like, oh, okay, thank you, Jesus. Like,
Right?
like,
Right?
and it's true. Like you have to, look at things like that and have that openness, because even thinking about the vision that they had for us, given where they started.
Right.
Like you have to dream big. I mean, it's like not saying that we don't have vision for our kids, but we didn't have as far of a journey
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
go from where we were to where our kids are. But if you look back at where they are starting,
Yep.
and to have the foresight and the vision to prepare for kids and grandkids, in future generations, that
Mhm.
in and of itself, like talk about manifesting, like that is
Right.
like, I mean, I think almost every little trendy, thing that we could think of, it started with them.
Absolutely.
It started with them. And I take great pride in saying this. My grandmother graduated high school. My grandfather, I think the fourth grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
They put five kids through private school all the way to college.
Wow. Wow.
Like,
Yep. Yep.
that you can't not celebrate that.
Exactly.
and celebrate that history because I know for me, what I struggle with a lot when I see people talk about, like I hate that phrase, I'm not my ancestors. You better wish you were.
Hello.
Because the things that they went through and the things that they accomplished, but we have to speak more on that history so that we can understand what we have done. And if we have done it, we could do it again.
Absolutely. And, I know that we're going to get into those things that we need to unlearn. I think this is a perfect segue because I think at least when I can recall people making that comment, it's because they are thinking about some of the negative things, right? Some of the things they needed to unlearn, some of
Right.
the struggles they had. And one of the things I love to point out to people is that, especially thinking about mothers, because, we get credit for it, but we also get blamed for it, right?
Absolutely.
Ma'am, let
Absolutely.
a child do anything, and it's always like, well, where was his mother?
Yes.
Like, and where was his father? I mean,
Right.
right? I mean, I'm just saying, right. So,
I used to tell my husband all the time, like if he dressed my child crazy, I'm like, see, they not gonna say his daddy dressed him today. They gonna say, where was his mama? And I
right,
wasn't even there.
right,
Like I had
yeah,
no parts in this.
right. So, but one of the things that I really like to emphasize is that we were not talking about the mental load of women with our mothers. We still face sexism today, but it's
Yes.
not like what they faced back in the day where, I mean, you just had to sit down and take it, right? If you like, this was just a part of,
Right, right.
right?
I mean, like I'm still in shock when I hear, like when I think about like that, like how recent women were allowed to have credit cards. Like I'm like,
Right?
are you serious? Like, are you serious? I think they said
Exactly.
like the 70s or the 80s. I'm like, are you absolutely serious? Like this is ridiculous.
Exactly. And so I think that for the most part, and granted, there are definitely some people with problems bigger than they can solve on their own, and
Right.
it impacts the way that they interact with other people. But I think for the most part that most people did the best that they could with the information and resources they had, and when they knew better, they did better,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so sometimes I feel like we're holding our parents and our grandparents to our standards today,
Right.
where we want to talk about body positivity. And absolutely, we should. No one should be made to feel, ashamed, embarrassed for who they are and how they look and the shape of their body. But that's not lessons that were taught 20, 30, 40, 50 years
No.
ago. So we can't hold them to that same standard. Now we can say, okay, well, mama, but we don't compliment on, or
Right, right,
comment
right,
on this
right. We
right
could, we
now.
look, we could try to, okay, now with these grandkids, look, can we do a little something different? Let's try. We can work with them on where we are, and we
Yes.
can have those conversations because sometimes I don't, on both sides, I think that we are not giving the other side the appropriate amount of grace, right?
Mhm.
Because I
Yes.
feel like although, you know, I know many people that are sitting here right now, like they can attest to them sharp tongues of the previous generations, and they quick to have their commentary, but they also, I feel like, did a lot of that out of love, even though it didn't feel like it. It felt
Mhm.
harsh, felt
Yes.
harsh. But I think a lot of times it was not necessarily that I'm trying to hurt you, but also I don't want you going out into the world for somebody else to say something negative about you. Or
Mhm.
I want for you to be healthy. I want for you to be, so I
Right.
think that the comments in most cases, like you said, there's some extreme cases where it's like, okay, that's We're gonna put
Right.
that on the side. That's something for you to talk to your therapist about. But in most cases, I think that they meant well.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, like I as I got older, I know my, as you start to change out of that like parent child and you come into like a different sort of relationship. As I got older and I could vocalize back to my grandmother, like, or I'll get upset about something she said and she noticed it, I also noticed her be hurt by the fact that she hurt me
Yes.
and her not knowing how to really process that.
Right.
And they also were brought up in a time that they weren't taught to apologize. Like
Hello. Hello.
I can remember this was so funny to me. Now it's hilarious. At the time, I was just like, ma'am, I don't want to fight you today. But she said something to me. I don't remember what it was, but I was upset. And I hadn't seen her like in a couple of days. And so then, I go over there and I'm sitting there and she's talking and I'm listening, but I'm just not giving any kind of energy because I'm still mad, right?
Right.
And she looked at me, and this is her apology. She said, "You still mad? I thought you was a Christian." What? I don't even understand how what?
Right.
And now I can laugh about that because she was serious. That was her whole apology right there. And she was serious. But she came from a different
A different
generation
generation. Yes.
and
Yes.
that wasn't how they communicated. And so, it's like don't throw away the whole relationship because there's some either generational or personality differences.
Hmm.
I just see so many people wanting to throw away the whole relationship. And unless there's something like if there's intent,
Right. Right.
that
I
that
get you
is
there. Yep.
that's
That's
different.
a
If
whole
there's
different
intent to
ballgame.
cause harm, that's different. And I'm
Yep.
all for, putting yourself in safe space, right?
Yes. Yes.
You should not be putting yourself in situations where you are not able to be a safe functioning human being, right? So not those cases, but some cases it's just any relationship you're gonna have moments.
Yep. I completely agree with that. And the other thing that I like to remind people is that it doesn't have to look the same way, and you get to set new ground rules. So, one of the things I share is like if your mom can't come to your house without saying, you didn't sweep the floors. Because you know you didn't sweep the floors. She know you didn't sweep the floors. And that comment does not need to be made, right?
Right, right,
And but the thing is that do you have to meet at your house?
right,
Can you just go have lunch out somewhere where you get to enjoy her company, she enjoys your company, you have your couple of hours, and then you go your own ways without getting defensive, where you do have topics that you can discuss that help you to learn more about your family history or more about her as a person, not just as a mother, right?
right,
Did you
right,
accomplish her hopes and dreams? What were her aspirations? How does she intend to spend her golden years?
right,
What would she like to read or do or right? And just really enjoy the time that you have as an adult. And some of that, yes, is, the mothers or mother figure in this role needs to take ownership in this too, because like your job as parent has shifted, right?
right,
So it's
right,
not, girl, that color don't look good on you. Or why is your hair like that? Right? Like
right,
those things, no, like you can't, right? We have to accept and be okay with,
right,
right?
right,
But it, certainly switches to more of, at sometimes it's going to be role of a coach, right? And oh, you know what? Here are like three opportunities that I think would be great for you. Or like, what are you working on and how can I help you right
right,
now? Sometimes it is as a friend, and there is something completely different and beautiful about, and I'm talking about adult child
Yes.
to adult parent, right?
Right, right. No, yeah,
You're
you
not
got to
friends
do
with
your
your
job as a
5-year-old,
parent
right?
until
Exactly.
they have reached maturity.
Yes.
I
Yes.
actually had a conversation with Noah when I dropped him off to college. And I told him, I said, look, because I'm like, you need this, you need that. And we going back and forth because he's like, I don't need, I'm like, look, I'm your mama. Like, trust me, I've been here before. This is what you need, whatever. So we going back and forth with that. And so I sat down, I had a conversation with him and I said, look, I said, I can remember when I sat down with grandma and I said, hey, she was commenting on something. I'm grown, got a child, husband, all that. She commenting on something. And I was like, I said, so when you were my age,
Mm.
did you do what you wanted to do, or did you do what somebody else told you to do? And she looked at me and she paused. And she just like she said nothing after that. And she never tried to cross that line after that.
Mhm.
Or she might tiptoe, but she ain't just bust in.
Right.
Right. And then when
Right.
she tiptoed, I just corrected her. But I looked at him and I told him that, and he said something. I said, no, not today. You're not there yet. Today is not that day. I said, but one day
We will be there.
will be there where you can turn to me and have that same conversation. And so, it's we got to guide them through and be the parent, do the job, right?
Yep.
And then once we can, put down that the bulk of that, what that looks like, then we can
Yes.
create a whole different
Yes.
relationship. But
Yes.
I think, one thing I wanted to add, like when you were talking, is a part of that, I love the idea of like, neutral space and all of that, but a part of that also is standing up for yourself.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be a fight. I think that that's what happens is, like you said, that defensiveness comes in, and now we are just replaying the child, mother
Yeah.
relationship all
Yep.
over again. And we're,
Hmm.
staying stuck in that cycle where
Hmm.
for me, I found, like freedom in a change in that relationship. Now she was gonna still get her digs in because that's just who she is. But I didn't receive them in the same way. Or if I felt
Right.
like a boundary was crossed, I had no problem saying
Yep. Yep.
that you crossed the boundary. And so it changed. Like if a friend said something to you that you found to be a little insulting or whatever, how would you respond to them, right? You're not about
Hmm.
to start a fight. You would, I mean, I hope not. You would, I'm gonna say
Exactly.
something. I'm gonna say something, flip back, or I'm gonna, just like address it in a way that lets you know I'm not cool with
With that. Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep. So one of the things that so there are two books that for me that really address this. So the first book that I read, the A Mother's Reflection, is in there. There's a beautiful part that I love that talks about sharing your life giving and life draining experiences
Mm,
with your mom. To say, hey, mom, like when you do these three things, it is so life giving to me, and I am, on cloud nine. But when you do these three things, it's life draining,
right,
and it makes it hard to be
right,
around you without getting all in my feelings or getting defensive or whatever this is. And again, so it's the same thing you're talking about with setting boundaries, right? So you're
right,
setting the parameters for that relationship to say, okay, these are the things that we are not going to do
right,
because maybe before you didn't realize the impact, but now you do,
right,
right? And the beauty of that concept is that, like you said, it transcends every relationship we have, whether it's with your your spouse or your children or your coworkers,
Right.
right?
Right.
To say, hey, okay, these are the things. Like it might not be a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to me when you
X,
fill in
Y,
the
and
blank,
Z. Right. And
right?
you have to be able to communicate that, and you have to be able to in all relationships, because I'm even thinking about right now about like the, business owner client relationship. I see a lot of situations where, when you started out, you might have felt like you weren't like the owner. You know what I'm saying? Like you
Hmm.
feel like the client has the power in the relationship, but really you are the business owner, and you set the stage.
Yep.
And I see a lot of times where people are struggling with standing up for what they believe in. And, I tell people all the time, my guilty pleasure is watching court TV. Like I've watched Judge Judy and all of these shows, right? And a lot of times what I see with the cases when it's like, business owners is the business owner knew that they weren't supposed to do the thing. Like they knew it was too short of a time period or whatever the situation is. They knew better, but they
Hmm.
allowed the customer to take them outside of their boundaries. They
Hmm.
didn't stand up for themselves. And now everything has gone horrible and they're in court because they didn't stand on what they knew they needed to stand on. So, I'm sharing that because I know some of y'all are like, well, what does this have to do with business? And I mean this podcast is about holistic life. So
Yes.
we don't even have to touch on business today, but it applies. It all applies in every area. We have to learn how to be our own advocates. We have to learn how to communicate effectively with others.
Yes.
Um, and we have to understand the uniqueness of individuals, right? Because, I love what you said earlier about getting to know about your mom outside of her being your mom,
Right?
because she's a whole person.
Whole person, goals, dreams, aspirations,
Right.
struggles, failures, like all of it.
And sometimes getting to know her better helps you to understand why certain things were done certain ways, right? Like, it helps you to really see that fully, like, oh, that makes sense now.
Right?
Like I
Right.
can remember having a conversation with my cousin, and of course, we all related to my grandmother in different ways, right? And she always had this thing with her and her dad and their relationship. And so I had heard my grandmother tell stories about her father and, being estranged from her father and all of this stuff like that. But I didn't process it the way my cousin did because of
Mm.
her own experience. And having a conversation with her made me see a lot of things so much differently, because I had again heard those stories, but just they kind of just went in one ear and out the other, like it was just a piece of the puzzle. But I didn't like dig deep into it. Like it didn't connect to me the way it connected to her.
Hmm.
But once I listened to it from her perspective, I'm like, oh, well, that makes some of these other things make a lot more sense.
Right. And so with that, I remember, so back to like my grandmother's generosity and there not being, I mean, if somebody needed a place to stay, you were at her house. She found a bed. She made it happen. Well, and so my mom is one of five.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to the number of friends who lived in that
Right.
house too. So my mom always wanted her own space. So when she had us, I remember there'd be times when she's like, okay, like, we're all home. She's like, okay, everybody go to their rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we were like, but we just want to play. And she was like, go to your room. She was giving us what she needed when
Right.
she was a
Her own,
child,
yes, correct.
right? And so again, having conversations with her and understanding that helped me to realize what she was doing and how,
Right.
right? It was like that's all she wanted when she was younger, right? Was just
Was
like
her
space
own
to be
space,
alone.
right?
Exactly. So she gave us a lot of space to be alone, and we were like, but we want
But
to
we
be
want to be
together.
together. And I think as parents, we always try to right the quote unquote wrongs of our parents, right? So we try to do that. But like you said, sometimes in doing that, like, our kids are like, why are we doing this? Like, what is this about?
Exactly.
Like that
Exactly.
wasn't their issue. That was our issue. So again, like, I mean, and think about for those of us that, are parents, think about your own experience as a parent. Like, nobody gave you a handbook of how to
Man.
do this, right? They was like, "Do you have a car seat?" All right, good day. Like that was it. I was like, "You don't have no more questions. You just wanted to know if I had a car. You sure you don't have no more follow-up questions? They ain't got no handbook back there, manual, nothing. You just said bye. Oh, okay. And then you just sent on your merry way to raise this human being. And then the other part of it is, I mean, you could have had all the training in the world on being a parent. You don't know who this person about to be.
Thank you. Thank you. That is such a big piece of that. So part of it is one, definitely encouraging people to get healed, whether that's therapy, whether you found a podcast, whether you're meditating, whatever's working for you
Correct.
to heal those things and be really intentional about the legacy that you want to pass along to your children, right?
Right.
But taking into account who they are,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because, we have six kids. And so one of the jokes is like, oh, you have a basketball team. And there are some families out there and they are all like playing a sport together, doing this,
Mm-hmm.
like having this group think and not taking into account that child number three doesn't want to do that.
Right.
And
They're
you're
like,
forcing this baby to do
can I
something.
stay home?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And so one of my sons, actually the youngest son, who's probably the tallest, is not into basketball at all whatsoever. And people are like, oh, do you play ball? And he was like, no.
No.
And exactly. Exactly. And so I really appreciate, and I do think that this is again, something passed down from my mom is the ability to see and accept each child for who they are and not force us to all
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing because child number one liked it or
Right.
because I think we need to, right?
Right. And just, because my mind just goes so many places. Like when you were saying that, so I just did a pre-session with someone. We're going to be talking about leadership, and it applies in that arena as well, because people do that, in leadership. They're like, this is how it goes. You got, six different employees.
Yep.
They have six different personalities, and while you may have like a company standard, I mean, like, there's house rules, right? You got
Right.
everybody got house rules. I
Yep.
love that my sister-in-law says, whenever her kids will say, well, so and so can do this, she said, different house, different rules.
Hello.
Everybody got house rules, right? But underneath those house rules, when you're dealing with this kid, this is going to work. And when you're dealing with this one, that's going to work. So you nuance those things,
Yes.
and being able to have those types of relationships, because you have the one kid that you might have to talk crazy to get them to, what I'm saying, like, you have certain kids that it's like, why you got to bring out the thug in me, like, why we got to do this, whereas you may have another child, like, um when Noah was small, the first time I put him in timeout, the way that child screamed and hollered, and I came from, they put hands on you, and I was like, the people gonna come get me. because they think I'm doing something to this child in here. And he upset because he got to stand in a corner. And I'm sitting up there thinking to myself, like, this is weird. Like, like I stand in the corner all day long. Like, I don't
Right? If
understand,
that's all
right?
it was, right?
But for him, it was, and I had to look back into myself as well because he carries a lot of my personality traits. For him, it was the fact that you were disappointed in him.
Yes.
And that was what upset him. And
Right.
so, I have to, like, there are times when, like, I have to tell his dad, wait, 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 I got this one. Because it's me all over again. So I
Right.
know exactly what he's thinking. And I know how to nuance, where get him from where he is to where I need him to be. But it's understanding that and understanding again, like you say, like your parent in the fullness, because they just trying to figure it out. Like they really were just trying to figure it out and do their best. And
Mhm.
it may not have come out the way that you wanted, but I think I definitely want to mention your journal of, like, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit further, but I love the idea of going back and forth between mother and child to like really learn about them because until you have those conversations, you don't really know what their perspective was. Like, why did they do that thing? Like, that thing might have been horrible to you, but why did they do that thing? Like, was there a past trauma of theirs? You know, was there a safety issue? Like, because, as mothers, we want our children to stay safe.
Mhm.
And so sometimes that might be stifling to their, growth
Yep.
because we see that there's a potential danger.
Hmm.
And they may think that we just don't believe in their dreams, and we like, nah, I just don't want you to be a casualty. That's where
Right.
I'm at.
Right. Do you
Like,
remember that whole adage of, but like, well, can I just go stay at so and so's house? You're like, you don't trust me? And it's like, well, I trust you. I just don't trust everybody else.
right,
Right.
right,
Right. And it's like, but like, we can't see some of the things that our parents can see. Right. And whether it was, like you said, from a past experience, or, oh, I know this person. Right.
right,
Like you can't. And as parents, I think that sometimes we don't want to expose our kids to things they don't need to know about this early, right? So
right,
it's, oh no, like he was in the park, like looking at some little girls, like, right, like this man is not okay.
right,
Right? And it's like, well, that's why you can't go have play dates at their house, but they
right.
can come
Because you
over here
don't
all the
know.
time,
Because you don't
right?
know who coming and going, right? And I mean, like,
Right.
perfect example. My grandmother was team no sleepovers, right? Two times she made an exception. One time I didn't sleep over, but they had like stuff happening earlier. And,
Mhm.
and the second time she let me sleep over because it was like a bunch of like friends, that the child that party it was not a close friend, but other friends, close
We're there.
friends were gonna be there. So what I learned was my grandma was right because the first one, um, there was like an iron mark on the like carpet, and somebody was like, "Well, what happened there?" And the girl was like, "Oh, my sister got mad and threw the iron at the grandfather." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus. Okay." So that was the one she picked me up from. The second one, they were in the mother was an alcoholic and the husband was abusive. So we got to listen to the mother get.
No, no.
And so I was like, oh, so that makes sense now. Like, because you know people, but you don't know people. You know what I'm saying? Until you
Right.
get, and so I kept that same rule with Noah, like as far as sleepovers. And I mean, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, I still have to protect you
Mhm.
because it's not so much the person that you're going to their house, but I don't know who comes in and out their
Whatever.
house. I don't know what that setup is. And again, as a child, you might be like, oh, well, my mom was so strict and but 9 times out of 10, regardless of if it was extreme or not, they were coming from a place of love.
So I do have to say, I completely agree with that. I wholeheartedly do. But when writing the journal, I polled women, who had adult kids, and was just like, if you could do anything differently, what would you do? And so I asked my mom this question, and she says, I wouldn't have been as strict. And I was like, wait, what? Because I did you.
Yes.
Um, and she said I would not have been as strict. And what that was so cathartic for me because it was very easy for me to assume that she thought she did it all right.
Yeah.
Right. And so for her to say no. And when I think about it, my gosh, my mom was a teen mom,
Mm-hmm.
single mom for most of the time. I am in awe. I am in awe of this woman and what she was able to accomplish and the maturity that she had to make some of the decisions that she made. At the same time, she was young.
Right.
And so she was like, oh, nope, nope. Like, here's a no, 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 no. Right. And
Right.
again, it was out of a sense, like you said, of protecting, of loving, of like, baby, it's me. Like I'm the one holding this down, doing this, doing that. So I need to make sure that these things are on lock. And right, as a child, you're like, well, but why can't I just,
Right.
right?
Because you're like, well, it's just my friend. And it's just, like it's all these things that you're like, you are not allowed to do and other kids are allowed to do. And, it is certain things that I'm like, well, yes, I really think I would have liked a little more freedom on. But then there are other things that I'm like, yeah, I
That was a
kind
good,
of,
right, right.
I'm like, one of my friends, we went on some adventures, and I'm like, as an adult now, looking back, I could have died a lot of times.
Right,
Um,
right.
so like it's
Exactly.
and even that was not of her choice, right? Me and her had adult conversation of her, like, when me and this girl became friends, she did not approve of it. And my uncle, who was her youngest child, so we were very close, my uncle was like, you know what, she got to find her way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he's like, she has a good head on her shoulders, she has to find her way. And that was what allowed her to kind of take a step back,
Mhm.
and like you mentioned about your mom being a younger mom and a single mom, my grandma, of course, was my grandmother, so she wasn't younger, but she still was a single mom, raising me.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that we also don't always give credit for of like not having that sounding board, because that balance, right? Because I'm going to be on the side of like, I don't want to never happen to you ever. And then my husband's like way more laid back about things. He's gonna like defer to what he thinks is like the best decision, but he's still gonna bring that perspective of, well, it's gonna be all right, or
Right,
that
right.
that point that my uncle kind of brought into that situation.
Exactly.
And so you have to look at those factors as well. Like,
Mhm.
parenting is hard enough, but then parenting without a partner that is, active and supportive, that's a whole nother thing. Like, you're responsible for people' life, and you ain't even got somebody to bounce this off of.
Mhm. Mhm.
And everybody around you is judging how you do this thing.
Yep, yep. And unfortunately, it sometimes not only judging, but withholding assistance that would be given to somebody who, quote unquote, did it right.
Right.
Right. So it's like, oh, well, like, she got married and had a baby. Oh, yeah, like I'll help her out. But not her because and it's just like, Come on now. Really?
It's
Let's
ridiculous
not
to
play
me.
these games.
Like it's like scarlet letter level, to me
Yes.
with some people. Like I know people who won't attend a baby shower if
Baby
it's a
shower.
single mom and all this different stuff. And I'm like, so look, you gonna tell me that this person that's married, they had this baby, they never
Hello.
fornicated or did anything. They never sinned. They never did any kind of thing that you
Right.
would consider
Right.
a sin. They
Right.
they they just it's not documented. It's just not documented.
Hello.
So like, but to me, that's the person that needs this the most.
Hmm.
Like, why are we passing that type of judgment?
Right.
Why are we not that support system? Um, I mean, when this airs, we rolling right into Mother's Day. There are a lot of mothers that are doing the thing. They hard in the trenches, but because they don't have a partner, they all they getting is whatever them little children put their little fingerprints on at the school.
Right. Right.
And they're
Yeah.
not getting a day off. Mother's Day is my day off. I'm off all my jobs on Mother's Day. I'm like, I'm not doing work. I'm not doing family work. That's my rule on Mother's Day. I tell them all the time, I want boiled seafood and a new pair of pajamas. And I'm not, that's it.
Right.
And Noah came to me when he must have been about 8 years old one Mother's Day, and his dad was cooking or doing something. He was not in the room. And he came to me and he said, Mommy, I need a band-aid. And I said, Where your daddy at? Sir, I'm off the clock. Where is your daddy? Like, this is my day off.
Yes.
But those mothers don't get that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't know why we aren't more supportive as moms. I know in our pre-conversation we talked about mom guilt,
Hmm.
like I I I really want to see a change in that of, what a, quote unquote good mom looks like. Motherhood hits different for different people, different situations with their kids, different lives. It doesn't make you a bad mom if you're not the super mom, like
If you're
that
not at
archetype.
every game, if you're not making homemade meals every night, if you're not, this whole thing about not asking for help and like you said, being a super mom and being able to do it all. Like that is so not, it's not honoring of the person that you are. Can we do it as mothers? Absolutely. Like
Right.
when
But
push, we can do some things, but we're not meant to operate at that level all the time.
mm-mm. And at what cost, right?
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
for me, when I made the like kind of shift away from, you know, super mom, super woman, like just that archetype. When I made the shift from that, I realized that, okay, there might be some dirty dishes in the sink, but you know what? I had a really good day with my family.
Look,
I wasn't walking around tired, overwhelmed, irritated, mad with the world because I had given everything that I have and more than I have, and I still have more stuff to do.
hello.
I wasn't in that mind frame because what, I just released myself from that. Like,
Yes.
what's
Yes.
important in this moment? Like right now, what feels like it's important? Let's all get on the sofa and snuggle up and watch a movie.
Right.
Like
Right.
those are my favorite moments, like just being just piled up together. Like, when Noah's home, I usually have Noah on one side of my lap and Walter on the other side. As grown as he is, he's still,
Yes.
he still will snuggle up on the couch like that, and his dad's on the other side of him. And I mean, he
Right.
getting tall, so it's a stretch, but it works. And we have to give ourselves permission to experience that and to
Absolutely.
not like just always be like, oh wait, if I don't do this, like you said, if my mom comes over and she's like, oh, you ain't sweep the floor, Lord Jesus,
Right.
like
Right.
I can't do all these things, not in function.
Well, that's the thing, and function and want to be somebody that your kids want to be around,
Yes,
right? Because if you're fussing all the time, if you're upset all the time, if you're frustrated all the time, who wants to be around that?
nobody.
Right?
You look,
And
you
so,
don't even want to be around
yeah,
yourself.
exactly, exactly. And so I remember like a couple of things. So one, like the first book, A Mother's Reflection, that came because after I turned 30, my mom says, I thought you'd have written a book by now. I was like, huh, why? And she was just like, I don't know, I just thought you would have. And so then every couple of years, I would be like, if I ever wrote a book, what would it be about? Right. And
Right.
so eventually it came to fruition. Right. So I absolutely love that. Um, but with thinking about my children and it was one Mother's Day. I got up that morning. They had all made these little cards, the construction paper, 10 things I love
Hmm.
about you. From the 5-year-old, it was amazing. From the 14-year-old, I felt like an afterthought.
Right, right,
And I was like, I would check this because I do too much to be an
right.
afterthought.
That part,
Right?
like, cause you're never an afterthought to me.
Hello. And so I made a list of 10 things I would love or appreciate. And then I left. I took myself out to eat. I went to the mall. I got some ice cream. I went to the lakefront and I started really reflecting on my role as mom and if I created the memories that I wanted to create with my children, if I
Hmm.
taught them everything that I wanted them to know before they left my house, like just like all of the things. And it was absolutely beautiful to sit back and really reflect on these things and be like, well, wait, a few of these things need to change
Right,
because one, I'm pretty much guaranteed 18 birthdays, 18 Christmases, 18, right? I was like, but I want more than that.
right,
And I want
right,
my kids to come home because they want to be with me, not because, oh, well, I'm going in town. I got to go visit mama.
right,
Right?
right,
Like,
right. You don't
right?
want it to be like an obligation.
Exactly.
Like it's like I
Exactly.
can't wait to touch down and go and give my mama a hug.
Exactly. So it's like, well, what is it going to take for me to be that person? And again, for me, that was definitely like letting go of that whole like super mom, like doing it all. Because again, I wasn't the person that everybody wanted to be around.
Hmm.
Right. So in letting that go and redefining, a clean house and redistributing the way that we did things, it really helped to not only nurture those relationships with my children, but also like relationships with my mom got better
Hmm.
too, right? Like there
Yeah.
was definitely more of a sense of appreciation of everybody. And I will say when people ask, but like, how do you do these things? It's because I have an amazing support system.
Right, right.
I have my mother is an absolute rock. I mean,
Hmm.
she comes over weekly to just do whatever needs to be done. And sometimes that's us just talking or watching television together or running errands or her babysitting or I mean it she will rearrange the furniture, girl. And Derek was like, your mama was here today, huh? And I was like, she just wanted to know what the TV would look like in a different room, right?
Yes. No, like my grandmother is the only person that I'm open to that with, right? Like in a sense of like, well, my cousin too, but like she will come over. Like when I was pregnant with Noah, she was like, she was cooking food, she was washing clothes, she was doing all these things, and I was just like, and I remember one time she came over, one of the storms or something, and she came and like spent the night, and she woke up the next morning. She said, "It's okay if I fold your clothes." I said, "Ma'am, you don't never have to ask me, can you fold my clothes?"
Right?
Ma'am, if
Right?
that makes your heart sing,
Look,
look, I'm
sing heart, sing.
now I don't know if my clothes know how to be folded, but If you want to do it, go ahead and do it. But, but I totally agree with you, just that idea of like shifting who you are, right? So that you're in a happier space. Because who wants to be the house drill sergeant, right? Like, who really wants that job? So, like, shifting that and then having that support system, because a lot of times we have it and we're not using it.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
We're not
And
using it.
for me, one of the things with kids, when I thought about it again, it was I wanted my kids to know how to run a household when they left my household, which means they had to practice
Right,
doing
right,
those things. So if, they had to learn to cook, right? The same way I had to learn to cook.
right.
They had to learn to do laundry and do the shopping and do the budgeting and do all of these things. So they are prepared when they leave my house to
Yes,
take care of themselves fully,
right.
right? And so sometimes like we can get caught up back to that like a good mother and like, oh, but like she's supposed to do all the things. And it's just like, but if we're doing all the things, how are they learning how to?
Do it for themselves.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a part of our job. Our job is not to be the workhorse. Our job is to produce productive citizens into the
Yes.
world. And
Yes.
I think that we get confused about that job. And it is so
Mhm.
crazy because of the parallels, because of, like I said, I had this pre-session about leadership, and that was one of the things that we talked about, is like, you are not, as a leader, your job is not to do all of the work. Your job is to produce employees that are successful. And
Absolutely.
that means that your company is successful, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing with motherhood. We have to put them in a position because, like you said, they got to go out into the world, right? They got to do these things. Noah called me one day, like a few weeks after he's at school, and he's like, "So we went to this session, and they was teaching people how to wash their clothes. How they don't know how to wash their clothes, Mama?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Mhm.
But when he was old enough, this is how the machine works. This is,
Right.
these are the basics. He been washing his own clothes since he was about 8 or 9 years old.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And,
Those
so
front loaders make a big difference, girl.
right,
Right?
because they don't
The
have to
top load
go.
they can't reach, but the front load.
But I'm like, we we don't use that support we have around us. We do not have to carry the weight. When I started like renegotiating things, I'm like, dude, so look, them dishes, that's you.
Mhm. Hello.
And and the other thing is, we have to allow people to grow into those things,
Yes.
because look, in the beginning, he probably got a C minus on dishwashing. But I could take it back, I could admonish him, or I could just point out, hey, look, make sure you're doing this, or make
Right.
sure you're doing that,
The
or
back and
whatever.
the front.
Right. But I'm not, this ain't none of my business no more. Like, every once in a while, do I have to grab look at a skillet and be like, let me rinse this out real quick before I use it? Yeah.
Right. Right.
But me rinsing one skillet versus me washing dishes every night,
Hello.
it's two totally different things. Now he didn't went
Absolutely.
to school, so now we got to renegotiate. We still playing around with those things, but the point being, like, use the support that you have around you. Stop being that martyr that has to do everything, because you think it's like you coming off as this sweet, nice martyr, and everybody's like, "Oh, I love her so much." They really thinking this be here, because you walking around like a holy terror,
Because you're exhausted,
because
because
you're
you're
exhausted, you're
drained. Your cup is
frustrated,
empty.
And
Yeah.
then because they're not doing the things, they don't appreciate it in the same way. So I don't know if this happens in your household, but it surely happens in mine. I'd be ready to fight. The second I clean off a space, somebody about to come put something down in that space. And I'm like, but they don't appreciate that it took me all day to clear off this area.
Right.
And then you come home from work and just drop
Uh,
whatever in it.
well, look, so one day, one of my kids, they had just finished the dishes and they went back in the kitchen and they were like, how are all these cups getting here already? I just finished the dishes. It's like, welcome to my
But they
world, baby.
learn the
But
appreciation of
look,
it.
look, and it's like, look, you get one cup and you just keep using that cup all day. And I'm like, huh, imagine that,
Oh,
right?
because Noah would get so mad because he would wash the dishes usually in the afternoon when he gets home from school, right? So he's washing the dishes, but now I'm cooking dinner, so I'm making new dishes as he's washing dishes, and he just looked back at me, and I'm like, "My bad, friend. I'm sorry, but I got to cook dinner. Like, what you want from me?" But it's a different appreciation
Yeah,
when they have done the work. It's easy to overlook something that you haven't experienced. So you're not realizing how much
goes into it.
goes into it.
Absolutely. So
And so
this is
you just it's just always done. It's just magic, you know.
right. Right. So that's one of my things, like when your kids are little, like toddler little, right? This whole thing, and I used to be guilty of this, of after they would go to bed at night, then I would go clean up everything and magic, right? You wake up in the morning and like it's all right. And it's like, oh wait, no, 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 no. I need to clean up when you are here so you see how
What's
we do
happening.
this, and
Right.
then you come and join in and help. And it's like, you know, kids love games.
Right.
Gamify it all. Be like, how many toys can you pick up in 2 minutes? Can you
Right.
pick up more than I pick up? Right. And
Right.
then it's done. Right.
Right.
So, but I do think that's a mistake that sometimes we make as women. One, because it interferes with our sleep. But two, it's like, oh, it's just easier to clean up when they're all, upstairs or all asleep or all
Right.
in the rooms. But then they don't get to see what it takes to get that
Mm-mm.
house clean again. Right.
Mm-mm. And they don't
So
they don't appreciate it.
exactly.
Um
Exactly.
you making me think about this is something that I learned, and I can't even give credit to where I originally learned it, but in when I was growing my balloon business, and somebody said once, when you do, like, let's say you do something pro bono for like a charity or whatever, or you do something discounted, make sure you invoice them for the full amount and then put the discount, because
Yep.
then they understand what they're getting and the
Yep.
value of it.
Hmm.
Because what happens a lot of times with these like events or whatever, they gonna go from one place to the next and next and next to get free.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I need you to know what I'm giving you, because when you come back, understand, when you come back, this is what this cost. It's not a sticker
Exactly.
shock. And
Yep.
so I think that that's the same concept with these kids, is like, this is what this entails. And because this is what this entails, then are less likely to just throw your toys all over the floor when you got to pick them all back up.
Hello. Hello. Right.
Right. Like when
And
I got to pick
so,
them up, it don't matter, because not saying that, I mean, kids can be a-holes, but that's not what I'm saying. Not that you're doing it on purpose, but
right.
it just doesn't register to you
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
there is a cost to this,
To
right?
this. Exactly. Exactly. And to your point, being on the nonprofit end, so I remember, working with several organizations and same thing. I remember one of the women who's in a group who's a CPA, and she said, okay, like it's great to have all these in-kind donations or things that you're doing and you're not providing receipt for. She said, but put a value next to that, because the organization needs to know That right when it's not given anymore, how much we need to put in a budget to replicate
Correct.
that event, right?
Correct.
So it helps the business to be able to show this, but it helps the nonprofit to completely understand how much it would take
To
if
put
there
this
weren't
on.
these relationships exactly to
Right.
put this
Right.
on.
Right. And
Um,
yeah, I just think I don't know. I really love the conversation about like just dropping this like super mom cake because it again like the version of you that comes out when you're not having to save the world.
man,
It's a
right?
different version, it's a
Yes.
different relationship. You
Yes.
know, you have that softness with your kids. You have that, um and then I'm just thinking about even just by dividing the workload. Like think about, especially if you are like working a full-time job or you running a business, you got the kids and the household and all this stuff like that. I can remember so many weekends that was just like cleaning the house. Like,
Yep.
just that's just what we
That's
did on
just
the
what,
weekend. Like, I would much rather go out and, have a walk together as a family or go to a festival or go do something else
yep.
besides that thing.
Hmm.
And when you divide that responsibility, it doesn't become I'm just doing this thing this whole time. It's like, little pieces, little moments of the day that
Hmm.
somebody is, vacuuming or somebody is doing whatever, but it's not all day long. And it
Exactly.
doesn't have to be your house. Nobody gonna lick your floor. I'm just gonna just put that out there. Nobody's coming to
Right.
your house to lick your floor. So I mean, well, Walter will lick the
Well, I'm
floor.
about to
My,
say,
my
yeah.
puppy. My puppy will lick the floor and he makes sure that it stays very, very clean. Um, but I'm saying that to say like I think we over
Yeah.
we oversell, the importance of this. And I
Hmm.
think if more of us like there's some people that are just OCD and that makes them happy.
Yep. And
And
if
that's
that's
fine.
you, that exactly.
And that's
It-
fine. Do you.
yep.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go throw stuff on the floor just so I'm not saying that. But
Right.
if that's not you, let yourself off the hook and let
That.
other mothers off the hook because
Hello.
everybody is just like collectively on this hook. Just let it go.
Right.
Like, I mean, as long as you're not living in a hoarder situation, just let that go.
Right.
And understand that relationships come before these unrealistic expectations.
Yes. 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 I will say, so something that you mentioned earlier about this, the conversation on leadership that I wanted to go back to, is that leaders also come in every variety,
Yep.
shape,
Absolutely.
flavor, right? And so I remember my older two boys who are 17 months apart being in a program, and my oldest is very much my child, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
he is out there wheeling, dealing, negotiating, got all the stuff going on. And my second son is very much his daddy's child,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's doing the things, but you might not hear him say boo the
Mm-hmm.
whole time. And one of the comments that one of the coaches made was, "Oh, it'll be so great to see you come out of your shell and be a leader like your brother."
Mm.
To which I
I
had to
feel like
go,
you are a fly on the wall of this conversation. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
right? So then I had to have some conversations with him to say, buddy, like your leadership style is different.
Mm-hmm.
You are no less than a leader. You just lead differently. And
Right.
don't try and change yourself to be somebody you're not, because that's what the world says the definition of a leader is.
Correct.
We got him straight. Then I had to go talk to the organization and be like, okay, hey, okay. So I
Like, let's have one
appreciate
of
what
these
you're
little mama
doing,
talks real
right?
quick.
But we need to, and to their, I mean, I really I appreciate their reception of
Mm-hmm.
what I said. And honestly, it ended up changing the trajectory of their training
Mm.
because they were like, you know what? Like, you're absolutely right. And we can't focus on the extroverted, cheerleader
Right.
exclusively.
Correct.
Right? And so we need to help everybody see and identify those leadership skills that they possess, regardless of how it shows up.
Right. I love that. And now I'm telling you that was so much the crux of this pre-session because it is so many different ways. I am a big advocate of authenticity and being you are your best self when you are yourself, right? And I'm so over this either or society that we live in, right? That you like we have voted and this is the winner,
Right, right.
because I had two conversations yesterday. The second conversation I had was about introversion, right? Because I am an introvert. And there's this whole thing like come out of your shell, right? Like, and I'm like, it ain't no shell. This is who I am. I'm out.
Please.
This is
Hello.
who I am, right? Now, I understand the growth of being comfortable, like that is a different conversation, but who I am is who I am. Like I'll give you this is a funny story I always think about when people talk about introverts and extroverts. So Danielle Black,
Yes.
cheerleader,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
Okay. So we went on a retreat with Mary Jane to Italy, right? And a part of that was like a tour. And then the tour guide like came and met us at the hotel to get started for the day. And so it was just me, her, and like maybe three or four other people downstairs in the lobby. And the tour guide is like, "Are y'all ready for, whatever, whatever, right?" And so, my personality is kind of here, and
Yeah.
I'm also not a morning person. So, I mean, I'm like, yeah, And so she's like, "I'm not feeling the energy or whatever like that." And I was like, "That's the other Danielle. She coming. She gonna be down here in a few minutes. She
Right.
gonna have pom pom. She gonna do the whole thing for you." I said, "But I'm here, and that's where I'm gonna stay."
Hello.
And so one of the other young ladies like started laughing, and we hadn't really met like officially yet. We had been on the
Right.
trip, but we hadn't had a chance to talk yet. She was like, as soon as you said that, I knew we was about to be best friends. Like, because she was just like, you were just like very clear about this is who I am. But
Yes.
we live in a world that people try to shift that and change that so much that that's how these archetypes are created because everybody is moving toward this is what motherhood looks like, this is what leadership looks like, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I mentioned in the other conversation the book Good to Great. All
Mm.
of the majority of the great leaders were introverts. Every thing has its good and its bad. It's
Yep.
balance. It all comes back to balance at the end of the day.
Hmm.
But I would consider myself a quiet leader. My son is a quiet leader. I asked a friend one time, I was at an event and all these people was asking me questions and I was like attending the event. I was not the like I wasn't on like in charge of the event or
Right.
anything like that. And and I turned to her and I said, "Why do y'all always?" I said, "Why you assume I got more answers than what you got?" And she said, "It's just something about you. You just seem like you in charge." Uh, But I can't argue with her because it happens no matter where I go. I can be sitting in a room silent and I might say two words and that's the way things I'm like, why is there a line behind me? Like what is happening
Right.
right
Right.
now? But it's just a different style of leadership, but
Yes.
we are told it looks this way and if it's not this, it's not good.
Right. And then
And
what's funny is it changes, right? Because in school, you would have been the model student, where Danielle would have not been the model student,
right,
right? It's like, okay, you need to be quiet. And then, oh, look at why aren't you more like Danielle? Right? And then you
right,
get into the work world and it's like, oh, why aren't you more like Danielle? And you're like, there is nothing wrong with either of us. We
right.
each
We
have a purpose and have a place and, right, have a message to share, and it's just going to be shared
it's just
differently.
gonna be different. And it's like, why can't we celebrate those differences? Because to
Oh,
me, it's like, okay, there are certain things about Danielle that I will never be, and vice versa, right?
exactly.
And for me, it's like she stretches me in ways that out, and I'm not ever going to emulate her, and I stretch her in ways, you know what I'm saying? So I
Exactly.
think that it takes the
Exactly.
balance of having all of those things working in
Yep.
tandem. And we call ourselves the dynamic duo. Like, we get together and you watch out,
Right.
because you have all of the spectrum covered, right? We have to learn how to celebrate who we are. And I know I'm gonna bring it back around for
Yeah.
y'all, because I know I can go off on a tangent, but motherhood, we, as mothers, it looks different. All of my friends are amazing moms, and we all do it our own different way. It does not have to be the same way for it to work. It needs to be your way. It needs to be what makes sense for you, and stop trying to force yourself into this image that's not really you. Because then the other thing is, I mean, do your kids not even really know who you
Who
are?
you are. Hmm.
Like the real for real you. Like, do your kids know that? Like, I love when my child look at me, because he knows that I'm thinking something, or
Right.
he knows the thing to say back to me, because he met me before, the real version
Yes.
of me. And I
Yes.
can't say that that was always how I showed up as
Hmm.
a mom, but now it's like, just, this is it. This is who I
Right.
am,
Right.
warts and all. You got permission to say ma, not ma. Like,
Right.
you have that
Right.
permission, because I
Exactly.
always want to be doing the best for you. But you don't need a caricature of a mother. You need a real
A
person.
real, absolutely. And when you said that, it was so funny. For one of my kids' birthdays, we're all sitting around the dining room table talking, and my mom says something, and I know where she going because, again, like you said, I had met her before, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Mama," and she was like, "What?" I was like, "Mama," and she was like, Ty don't want me to say it. I'm like, and we
No,
just gonna keep
and
moving
I
on
don't,
because
and I
it didn't
don't.
need to be said. I
Let's
know
keep
where
it.
you were going, and we're not
Let's
going
keep it
there,
pushing.
right?
Look,
And so,
let's keep it pushing.
yes, right. And it was so beautiful to see and to have that comfort level. And again, and to know her.
Right.
And right, I'm like, I'm not surprised by something she says or does because I know who she is.
Mm-mm.
When it's time to give a gift, I know what to give her because I know who she is.
Right, right.
Right?
And that to me, I think, is, because sometimes, I know we talked about this a little bit, like, sometimes you see when it doesn't go right, and that also shapes how
Yes.
you look at things. And I'm just thinking about, like, my grandmother always was a very thoughtful gift giver. Like, she always, like, she always got you something that either mattered or that you talked about. Like, she always wanted to see, like, she would come to somebody's event and give them their gift and just be sitting in front of them. Like, they need to stop everything they're doing and open it right now, because she wants to see your reaction to the gift. Like, that was just something that was important to her. And I, have picked that up as well. Like, gifts are important to me, so I totally understand, like, the story you were telling about, like, what is the, like, what is this? Because I've had to have that come to Jesus conversation with my husband. I'm like, so look, sir. And I mean, and he put me in my place as well. He said, well, you buy whatever you want. So it is kind of difficult to get something for you. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's true, but I also want a lot of things. So uh
So there's something else. There is
there's
something else
something
out
else.
there.
So we had to work through that. But like I'm just like there's certain people in my life I'm like, I don't even need to, I could just put the gift right into the donation pile like immediately because you don't know me.
Mhm.
And so because you don't know me, you
Mhm.
can't even get close to that, like
Right.
even adjacent to something that I
That's going to
might
be
like.
meaningful to me. Yep.
And
Yeah.
so, when you said that, just made me think about that and the sadness of that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some sadness there of like not, either you not knowing your kids or your kids not knowing you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like there's some sadness there. And I think that is, of course we have to do the job of raising them, but we also want to be building a lifelong relationship.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is this beautiful give and take and sharing of, again, who you authentically are and sharing how you've changed, right?
Right,
Because
right,
maybe there was a time where this is my favorite artist, but now this is my favorite artist. Or I used to like these movies, but now I like these movies. Or I used to love physical books, but now I need audiobooks.
right,
Or, right, like wherever you are on this journey and to walk them through, or I've always wanted to visit such and such place, right? Or like my mom, does not swim, will not get on a boat to save her life, right? And she, because that whole adage of, well, I can't drink that much water,
right,
right?
right,
So
right.
and so like I am never going to get my mother a cruise to anywhere.
Right, because she doesn't want that.
She doesn't want that. Right. And so, like, I'm not going to try and force growth, right? Oh,
Mm-mm.
but mama, you need to, right?
No,
Like,
that's
I'm
not
not,
what she wants. That's not what matters to her. That's
exactly.
not like,
And it would be anxiety
yeah.
producing,
Yes,
right?
it's just
Like, why would
it's
you want to do that?
like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. And I think we have to really get to that point where we are really creating those kind of connections because I feel like that adult relationship is so beautiful when done right.
Yes. Yes.
But it's the groundwork that we're putting in now that gets you to that adult situation because again, I never want my child to feel obligated to come see me.
Right. Right. Yes.
Like that's just not the space, right?
Right.
That's just, yeah,
Well,
it's
and I
just not
think
the
that there
space.
is a time where women, I think, felt powerless. And so they used guilt to
Mm-hmm.
get what they wanted and or needed,
Right.
right? And so when you look at the number of, grandparents, or I think like older adult parents who are guilting their kids or grandkids into doing things because that's the only tool they have in their
Mm-hmm.
toolbox. They
Yep.
don't know how to get what they want without guilt.
Yeah.
And if you're relying on guilt or fear or shame or any of those things to try and have a relationship with somebody, right? Like
Mhm.
that's not working and it's not authentic. And that's the ones where it is an obligation and it,
It's
so,
ugh.
right? It's learn some other tools,
Right.
learn some other tools. We sometimes use that adage that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. When you look at how many elderly people or older people are, on social media, on these dating apps, on
Right.
these, I'm just
Doing
saying,
all kind of things.
when you motivated, you will learn something
Right.
new,
But I
right?
think I think a big part of it too, and we talked about this on the pre-session, is are you giving your parents the opportunity, right? Because like
Mm,
you said, with the guilt, they don't know any other way. But are you giving them an opportunity to come at the situation differently? And I'm thinking about a conversation. So I did a talk at ABWA in December about navigating the holidays and like, kind of tying in the calendar detox to that whole concept, right? And
Mhm.
so, me, I like everything interactive. So I'm like talking with one of the ladies in the audience, and she was saying about, their Christmas tradition. And so the grandmother has everybody come over first thing in the morning on Christmas, but they all have kids of different,
Yep.
ages and all of this stuff like that. And so, some of them have older kids who are not with trying to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, on
Right.
Christmas Day because they like whatever, And then the baby kids, they want to open gifts
Yep.
immediately at
At
home.
home. Yep.
So now, so it's this whole thing. And I was talking to her about renegotiating and like, whatever, because, I remember hosting, we did like a dessert party like around Christmas. Like this was like Noah was like, an infant at the time or whatever. And in my world, like I didn't invite my grandmother and everybody. I didn't invite my in-laws. I'm like, all right, now I don't have to go and see anybody on Christmas. We can just do our Christmas. And they were like, well, what time? And I was like, what happened? This did not this did not go as planned, but sometimes it is just the conversation of, hey, and
Hmm.
I think my grandmother came to me with it at some point of, well, I know you got the baby and y'all got whatever going on. And my grandmother's whole thing was dinner at 2, on Sunday. She would
Yep.
always have Sunday dinner at 2. So she's like, well, I'll see y'all at dinner, type of thing. So sometimes you have to trust that there can be a better relationship. And I think we don't
Yeah.
always trust that.
Hmm.
We want to hold people to how we've always seen them.
Which, oh my, so this concept, so it's so funny is that we are all about growth mindset when it comes to education, when it comes to work, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to, but not when it comes to like family and our parents.
Mm-mm.
Right? We're like, we're so fixed. Oh, this is who she is. This is how she is. And it's like, but like you said, are we giving an opportunity to build a new bridge, to build a new pathway that will then enable us to do something differently, to
Right.
create a new tradition that works for our family? This year
Right.
for Easter, so my oldest is 23, my youngest is 6. When my oldest was little, we had lots of cousins around that age in the
Mm-hmm.
family. So for years, I mean, there was like all of this, like, his side had an Easter egg hunt, my side had an Easter egg hunt. Like we had all of this. And with the youngest, she has, like maybe one in that age range on one side and one on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And family dynamics have changed. So like there was no big like family anything. And I was just like, I don't know what we're doing for Easter. I have no idea. I presented them with two ideas on Easter, and they opted for one where everybody got a dozen of eggs in a different color. We all stuffed those eggs. We went out and hid them, and then we could all go find a dozen of eggs, and you just couldn't find the ones you stuffed. When I tell
Mm-hmm.
you that everybody had a fantastic
Right.
time, it was absolutely beautiful. And the 6-year-old wasn't thinking, oh, the Easter bunny didn't come. Like, why do I?
Right.
She loves stuffing the eggs with
Right. Right.
everybody else, right? And
Right.
so, and what was beautiful, so we did that. Then my oldest ended up cooking lunch. We watched a movie. We played a game. It was fantastic. Nobody was exhausted after because we all ended up contributing and participating. Then the older two went out to go, like,
Mm-hmm.
it was a beautiful day. I think a new tradition in our family. My mom was here with us, finding eggs and doing all the stuff too. And again, it was absolutely beautiful, right? But I would have completely missed it if I would have been hung up on, well, nobody's doing this, like,
Right.
and just kind of. in my feelings about the nostalgia from,
Right.
when my older kids were younger, as opposed to saying, hey, what what do we want this to look like for our family? And what's
Right.
beautiful is that this will grow with our family. So once there are, you know, in-laws and, grandchildren, like we can continue this and it just
Right.
expands and gets bigger with
Right.
everybody. So it was absolutely lovely.
Right. I love the idea of reinventing your traditions, right? And making it work for your situation. And also, like you're leaving space for the future, but they might do something different. And that's okay too. And
Hmm.
that's I think where we, as we are nearing that stage, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes okay, well, I got to make room
4.
for what's coming.
Hmm.
And so it might be, like you said, your mom came over and hung out. You're saying it may be that now I'm a part of this tradition as opposed to I am the orchestrator of
Right.
tradition, and
Exactly.
you have to it's just that being flexible and working within what works and not being so rigid on the tradition, because I think,
Yeah.
like, before you talked about your mom saying she wished she wasn't as strict, and sometimes the strictness is necessary, but sometimes the like rigidity is not.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
where we, when we're just holding on to things that I saw something once, a meme that said, tradition is just guilt from dead people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the people that started the tradition probably not even still with us.
Exactly.
And we
Exactly.
just feel like we have to carry it on. And there's nothing wrong with adapting it. It's nothing wrong with, changing it or letting some things go. Like for me, this Easter, like I pulled out all my stuff, and Easter my favorite holiday. It's like my
Yeah.
favorite, like hands down. And I pulled out all of my holiday stuff, and I had like three huge containers full of like Easter egg hunt stuff. I should have called you. I put a post on Facebook, but I should have called you because I know you homeschool, you got kids and all. I should have called you, but I was like, you know what? I'm about to get rid of all of this stuff. Like I haven't done an actual Easter egg hunt in years because Noah's 18.
Hmm. Hmm.
My niece and my nephew are coming up right behind them. We have a couple of little ones, but not
But not.
a lot, like,
Hmm.
at that time that we used to do this like actively. And so I was like, this stuff gotta go.
Good for
I'm,
you.
I'm just
Yep.
like, I kept the house decorations because I love to do that
Yes.
part, but I'm
Yes.
like the eggs and there was like all kind of like little games and this and that,
Yeah.
like I'm like I like it, but
Right.
right now this is not a reality. Maybe at the point of grandkids or whatever, but I'm not holding this until then. So just
Right. Right.
let it go and
Yes.
let it go, do something new, do something different. A lot of our traditions now are very laid back. Like I
Hmm.
enjoy cooking, so I will take on that part, but like
Oh,
um
no, I saw your brunch pictures, which were beautiful, ma'am.
that's my favorite thing. Easter brunch is like my favorite thing ever in life, ever. Like ever. And you know what's
Absolutely
funny
beautiful.
about it? People don't realize like ain't nobody came over here. That was just us. Like I just enjoy it. It just brings me joy. But that's the thing is like there's some things that you can keep if it brings you joy. If you
Absolutely.
love to make the fresh baked cookies for the bake sale, make them
Right?
cookies. But if you sitting up there cussing somebody out the whole time that you're making them cookies, you better go carry
Let it
yourself
go.
over to the store and buy some cookies.
Yeah.
You could get you a whole tray of cookies at the grocery store, wherever you want to go,
Hmm.
and just bring them to the school and move on.
Hello.
If it's not
Absolutely.
bringing you joy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mm-mm. All right, Ty, we can go. We can go.
Right?
We can
Ma'am.
talk because this is such a rich topic, but I'm going to get the link for your journal. I know that you're going to share the link for the anthology. So I want everybody to, that's the best way that we could carry on this conversation, because we definitely need to heal around the wounds of our past,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like, right? We didn't get too deep into it, but that unlearning of, the things, keep the things that are serving you and unlearn those things that are not serving you. But let's release the animosity that you
Yes.
carry with that.
Mhm.
Because I promise you, again, we're excluding extreme situations.
Yes.
In a normal situation, I promise you, your mama was not trying to traumatize you. Like, that wasn't her goal. She
Mhm.
was trying to do her best to raise you to be a person that, she felt comfortable putting out into the world without having to keep her arms around you.
Mhm.
Like, sometimes they were trying to make us be tough. Sometimes they were trying to make us be strong. And maybe in this phase of your life, you're ready to be soft and you're not, you don't want to be strong anymore, right? Because I'm like, that's a cuss word now. I don't know. I know how to do it. I don't want to. I don't want to.
Exactly. Exactly. And so with the anthology, it's 29 women from around the world who each share a chapter in this book about their experiences with legacy of motherhood. So, like we just received the book for our, to read it, our first draft of it. And what's beautiful is that everyone has a completely different story that they are
Mm,
sharing, right? So I think that you will be able to relate with at least one of the stories, and it will, I think, challenge you to again be reflective on the legacy that you are creating, whether it's with your birth children or not,
mhm,
right? And to look back on your experiences and find a few pearls, a few nuggets that you're like, wait a minute, I'd forgotten about, my grandmother's love of music or my
right,
mother's love of adventure. And to be able to really highlight that and, like you said, let go of the animosity and hurt and frustration of some other things, right? There's therapy
mhm.
if you need it,
Yes,
because
yes,
sometimes,
yes,
right,
yes, and yes.
sometimes there are things where you're like, we're not just gonna, brush this under the rug. We need to go dig deep and figure
Right.
this
We
out
need to
and
work
learn
this
how to
out.
heal and move past it,
Right,
right? So that's definitely out there for, more in cases where it's not just a difference of opinion.
right,
Right.
right, right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little deeper. Sometimes it's
Right.
it's a little deeper, and sometimes there's that in between, right? It's not like light, it's not super deep, but you know, I think by learning each other better,
Hmm.
there's that space to mend those wounds.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that that's beautiful. I think it's something that we all should read and really, like, kind of sit in, because in some instances, hey, there's not that opportunity to have that and repair that relationship, but that doesn't absolve you from the your own healing journey, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You may never fix that, but you got to fix you,
Yep.
because you are still out here in the world and you're interacting with people in the same way that that generational trauma may have come down. You may not realize, because I'm sure even in the traumatic situation, they don't realize that that's what they're doing, right? You may
Exactly.
not realize that you are putting that energy into the world. And I'm a big, big believer of the fact that just for those of you that are like, where did this episode come from? Again, I told you I'm holistic. We got to touch all the things, but I'm a big believer of, you know, your entrepreneurial journey or your just life journey itself is centered around your healing journey.
Absolutely.
The way that you function in the world, whatever title or capacity that you choose of the many ones that you carry, is going to be influenced by your healing journey. And if you're not willing to deal with you,
Right?
Jesus, like
Right.
good luck, good luck. It's gonna be
Absolutely.
a bumpy road if you're not willing to sit and reflect and be introspective and deal with the stuff. Because if you don't deal with it, you're carrying it and then you're furthering it.
Absolutely. So when you talked about, this time where maybe your mom or isn't here, right? Or your grandmother, whoever it is, isn't here. I've also written a journal for dads, and I've
Mm,
had some beta readers go through. And what was the most beautiful thing is that two men, both in their 60s, who had completely different experiences with their dads, said that reading that helped them to heal that relationship that they had with their father, because there
wow.
were things they hadn't thought about, things that
Mm,
they didn't realize that made their dad who he was,
right,
and helped, right, framed like why he interacted with them the way that he did. And so,
mm,
even if you're right, that parent and grandparent isn't here, thinking about these things and
right.
digging deeper, sometimes even asking other relatives who knew them,
Mm-hmm.
like, what did you, and what about, right, can help you heal from that hurt, and again be able to take those nuggets and the love that they were able to share with you, and
Right,
just appreciate that and pass that along and acknowledge what you're not passing along, right?
right,
Like
right.
we're leaving that there.
Right, we left that the buck stops here. That
Yes.
like they have all the things that say established in. This ended in
Hello.
this ended in
Hello.
2025. We're gonna leave that right there. We're not gonna
Right?
take that any further.
Yes.
And I'm when you said that, it just made me think of my own experiences as far as like, I had my relationship with my father and like my, thoughts about that or whatever, but it was something about like sitting at his memorial service and listening to people talk about my dad and things that I knew about him but didn't like think about like on a deeper
Mhm.
level of who he was as a person, right? Like hearing it reflected through others. So I love how you said like, just going and talk to other people. And it wasn't that anybody said anything that I was just like, what? Like it wasn't that. It wasn't that at
Right.
all. It was actually so accurate to who I knew him to be. But I realized in that moment that there were a lot of things that I guess I just never put deep thought to, right? Like that,
Mhm.
yeah, that really is like character trait of his,
Yeah.
or things that like, my father didn't raise me, right? He was always there, but he wasn't like my parent, like my
Mhm.
primary parent. But like so many things that I share with him that is
Yes.
so like weird to me because I'm like, okay. Like what's that? Like, like you expect to share like, physical traits, right?
Right.
But like personality traits and all of those different things that you share with a parent that you don't realize. Or
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
we could start a whole nother topic on this.
Right.
I'm gonna
Right.
say this and then I'm gonna dip out. But how many of us are walking around as the reflection of our parent and we don't even realize it?
Mhm.
Like I know my child is my child. Like I know hands down my child is my child. And I know that there's such a huge part of me that is my grandmother, right? But there are a lot of people that I'm like, like I could think of family members and I'm like, so you keep talking about this lady, but you act just like this lady.
Right. Right. Ma'am.
Like that's why y'all don't get
Exactly.
along because y'all too much.
Alike.
Like, so I mean, it's just so much that can be uncovered by just going down this journey. And I don't believe that life happens in a vacuum. So, because some people may say, well, why am I going down this journey? What's the value of it if they're not necessarily looking to repair a relationship or what
Mhm.
have you? But it's your history. It's your, it's who you are,
Mhm.
comes from where you come from.
Yes.
And understanding, the more you understand that, the better you understand all the other areas of your life, because it's going to show
Mhm.
up in how you have relationship with all others.
All others. Yes.
All right, I'm gonna do the wrap up question side because we're gonna be here like this.
Right?
I love this
Exactly. We
topic.
can, yes,
I
yes. We'll
love this
have like an
topic. I
extended
love
version, a part two, a part, right?
right.
Like sequel.
I absolutely love this topic. It's just because I think we have to get there. We have to get there because I think we are sometimes tied to the expectations of our mothers, or the example, of our mothers,
Mhm.
that we don't find our own way.
Yes.
All right. So wrap up questions before we go, because oh girl. Okay. All right. So tell me about your favorite pair of pajamas, Ty.
You know what? Like a old t-shirt. Like I love just grabbing an old t-shirt and a pair of shorts. That is my jam.
Yeah, that's on my list. I love all pajamas,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I have like certain shirts. Like I have like this one, well, I'm saying I have, it's not mine, but I stole it. It's my husband's band t-shirt from like high school. And I mean, that thing is like a hanging on by a string and a prayer, but it's so comfortable,
Yeah.
and it's just like, yes. So sometimes that's my
Go
go-to.
to, right? Okay, so I do have to say I have this shirt from my grandmother. So Michael Jackson t-shirt that I absolutely love, but that of course it also reminds me of her. Okay, so go on.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's just some stuff is just nostalgic,
Yes,
and I've like done
yes.
so many donations and this, that, and the other, but that just, I'm like, no,
Yep,
you just gonna stick around.
right.
Okay, my time freedom allows me to.
Ooh. You know what? It allows me to take a nap when I need a nap. It
Hmm.
allows me to binge watch something when I need to binge watch,
Yes.
go for a walk, and enjoy nature when I need it, to really practice self-care in so many different ways, but to also model to my children how to
Yes.
take care of yourself.
Yes. 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 I feel like, we, especially with the kids, we're getting into this world of like so many obligations, so much pressure, so much whatever. And that is one of the life changes that I've made, that I am so glad is becoming generational with my child, because he is able to like balance that. Like he'll say, "Oh, mama, I had to take the day off." Like, and I know that he is responsible. I know he's gonna, do what he has to do, but I also know that when he knows he needs it,
He takes it.
he's gonna
Exactly.
take it. And I don't have to worry about him overworking himself. And like,
Right.
there's such pressure, especially with school and all this stuff like that, like that
Yes.
you can find that balance. So I love that, like that we are modeling for them.
Yes.
We are
Yes.
modeling for
And
them, and if they see us in full self-sacrifice mode, then they're gonna think that that's what they need
what's
to
it
do
supposed to
as
look
well.
like?
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And I will say that it's you just have to like swallow and breathe deeply. But it's like, when I'm like, well, hey, can you? And they're like, no. And I have to be like,
Okay.
I understand that and I respect that. No. Right?
Right.
Like
No, I
because
mean, it's hard because you from the old school of like, wait,
right,
like every look, like my body is flexing right now, but I'm gonna just breathe and I'm gonna just keep going because we doing something different over here.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
but and giving them the freedom to make decisions,
Yes.
giving them the
Yes.
freedom to understand, like, we wanted to go somewhere and he was like, well, I can't go because I need to finish this project, like,
Right.
and I can't tell you, well, no, you gotta come and then you're gonna be up all night doing this project. I'm like, all right, well, you want me to bring you something back, or
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and being good with that and like
Yeah.
just changing those things again, like that kind of almost become knee jerk because it was how you were raised, but knowing that you're raising a different human being.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so what is the best advice that you can give anyone seeking the profits in pajamas lifestyle?
Hmm. I would say, and this is something that I am working through myself right now, is like pick that one thing that you can't live without doing,
Hmm.
right? That because in most of our businesses, we're definitely in a space right now where we're talking about multiple streams of income where you're blogging and podcasting and journaling and speaking and this and that and you're trying to, and sometimes we end up spreading ourselves too thin,
Hmm.
right? For the sake of this
Right,
freedom,
right,
right?
right.
Right. Right. And so it's like pick that one thing. And for me, like my thing changes quarterly because
Hmm.
I love being able to focus on community and focus on marriage and focus on self, right? But pick that one thing for this time block. And like that's where you're going to put most of your time.
Yeah,
And there are some opportunities that you have to let go. There are some opportunities that you can postpone and say, hey, you know what? Catch me back in quarter three. I'd love to do it then.
right,
Right. And not operating out of a sense of fear that if you don't accept it right now, it's never going to happen.
right, right.
Right.
I love that. Like, it's so funny because it just got like great how things roll together. I'm sitting over here shuffling papers because the note that I wrote in one of my conversations yesterday was, I can do many things, but what do I want to do?
Hello.
Right? Because we get caught up, like you said, in like trying to one monetize everything. Everything is not to be monetized. Like, let's just start there. Some things are just for fun
Yes.
and leave it at that. um the other part of what like jumped out at me when you were talking was just, for me, when people talk about the multiple streams of income, if they are not organic, right?
Mhm.
Do one thing successfully before you add another thing. I mean, and I understand like the example that you gave because I'm in that same boat, speaker and author and this and that. I get that, but they are co-mingled in a
Exactly.
way, right?
Exactly.
But
Yes.
even in that co-mingling, like you said, I'm gonna focus on this in this season.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then I'm gonna come to something else because what I see a lot of, which is not the true intent of the seven streams of income, is you got a bunch of things that's struggling and they all require full-time attention to
Yes.
be successful, right?
Yes.
So do a thing, get it to success to where you can almost autopilot it,
Mhm.
and then you do another thing, right? So you're not in infancy stage with like 12 things at one time. Like,
Right.
it doesn't make sense. You don't have that time and attention. Y'all, Walter says hello. um you don't have that time and attention to give to all those things, and now you're spreading yourself so thin that you're not being really good at any of them.
And you're not taking care of yourself and you're not spending the time you want to with your family, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just really, really like, something to think about. So I love that. I love that you said that. And I think we all get caught up sometimes in the because it's like I love all these things and you want to make them all work, but in due timing. Pick
Yes.
something, nurture it, get it off its feet. And it's like the kids, get this one potty trained before,
Right.
like
Right.
look, I'm a one and done, so I know you have more experience in that lane, but get this going, and then
Yeah.
you can pay more attention here, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I absolutely love that. And I think that that's like great advice, like to really sit down and focus in, because the thing about that focus in, things happen a lot quicker when you are like singularly focused. Like if you put all of your energy into this thing, the
Hmm.
results are going to come much quicker than
Absolutely.
when you're trying to spread yourself around
Yep.
everywhere. So
Yep.
I absolutely love that. So, I want you to share how we can get in touch with you. I know that we're going to share in the show notes about the book. Any
Mhm.
other words you want to say about the book or the journal before we close out?
So the other thing that actually combines the book and the journal is I've started doing a workshop. So it's
Okay.
a mother's reflection. Um, Let me pull up the exact title because I really like it. So it's a mother's reflection legacy journaling workshop.
Oh,
Right. So it's this great 90-minute interactive workshop that walks you through all of these different pieces. I'll be doing those throughout the month of May. So
okay.
if you want to grab a set of girlfriends and sisters and aunts and moms and cousins, right? It's
Right.
absolutely a beautiful experience to go through. You can certainly go through it, with friends or people that you don't know. But going through it as a family is also a pretty special
Yeah,
experience.
that is beautiful. And
Right?
especially, the month of May, you got Mother's Day and just like spring and renewal, like all of that, just coming
Right.
together. I think that that's
Yes. Yes.
beautiful. And especially, we talked about like the single moms and all of that, so that's an opportunity. Like maybe maybe you got the kids on Mother's Day, but maybe you get a babysitter one of these days, and make the workshop and some of your friends, and so that you can share in that experience, and really just get into the like the ooey gooey lovey part of being a mother, because sometimes it's like
Mhm.
Jesus. It's sometimes it's challenging, especially this time of year into school and graduations and all of this stuff going on. So sometimes it is, you know, everything is not roses. We're not trying to paint that picture.
Exactly.
But sometimes you get to sit in like the why this is so valuable.
Absolutely. And seeing it's so funny when you talked about the roses. I remember writing a blog that reminds us to step back and smell the roses of the growth of our children, because sometimes
Mhm.
we're so focused on, okay, I need to teach you this, I need to teach you that, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing that, that we don't see the growth.
Right.
We don't
Right.
see it. And when you step back, you're like, you know what? We used to have a real problem with your temper. And
Right.
you haven't had a temper tantrum in like 3 months. Buddy, you have come so
Right.
far,
Right.
right? And
Because we're too
acknowledging.
close. We're too close
Yes,
that we don't see them in that way. And I think unfortunately, like a lot of times, as parents, we don't do the parent teacher conferences and all this stuff like that. And I would always go, and the teachers were like, "Why are you here?" Because like he's always been a straight A student, a
right.
good kid, and I'm like, because I need to know, like if I'm not here, I'm not gonna, know what's going on.
Exactly.
But the beauty of that is also seeing your child from someone else's
That's his perspective,
perspective and
right?
getting that feedback about your child. Like
Yeah.
a part of that, like I was like, he is more like me than I realized. Like when I'm listening to his teachers, and I'm like, and they're like, he's got this like kind of quiet humor, and I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
mhm, yeah, okay.
Apple
Um,
tree. Right?
Like I'm like, okay. Um, but just having those reflective moments. I love that, like of just stepping back and seeing them in a different light. And then, like I said, I got an 18-year-old now, like just seeing him go through that college process and interviewing for, like he just got an internship for the summer and, like all of these different
Right?
things. I'm like, but so you just gonna be a grown man? Like that's what we do. Like, but you see your child, you see your baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All
Okay,
right.
so back to where you can connect with me. Time with Ty is the website. Time with Ty Nola on Facebook and Instagram. Time with Ty on LinkedIn. So you can visit any of those to find out where I am, what I'm doing. I am all about bringing you with me. So if you want to grow in a certain area, come join me. The more the merrier is the way that I see it.
Yes, and Ty is definitely that, like always about community, always about helping you to grow in the areas that you need to grow. So thank you again, Ty, for being here. You are my first repeat guest.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. What an honor.
yes,
What an
yes, you are
honor.
my first repeat guest, and I'm so glad that you came in. And I enjoyed our conversation about marriage. I enjoyed our conversation about motherhood. And I know you're not going to be a stranger because
Exactly.
we cross paths in so many different ways. So thank you again for being here. I want to thank the listeners for listening to this conversation. I hope you got something out of it. I hope that it opened your eyes in some ways about the relationships in your life, especially the relationship that you have generationally. So thank you guys, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Prophets in Pajamas podcast. I hope you got some great tips to start working with these. Want to stay connected? Follow me at Your Workflow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. For more information about creating balance in your life, register for my upcoming calendar detox challenge at CoachDanniD.com. Don't forget to subscribe, join the community, and book a call to find the workflow program that best fits your needs.